Now, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, the next thing we're going to be moving through, this is again coming from the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas by Radhe. We've discussed Brihaspati. Now we're going to get further information of the astrology of a native with a particular emphasis of Pushya Nakshatra. This is most typically conveyed as having the moon in Pushya, but this can also mean the Lagna in Pushya. This can mean the Lagna Lord in Pushya. And as well, this can mean any planet as being a lord of any house. You know, if you've got the second lord in Pushya, it's going to mean a certain thing. If you've got the sixth lord, if you've got the 11th lord in Pushya, Pushya Nakshatra is going to express the tones of that lord in different ways. And that's what we're going to kind of read through a little bit here. Now, this author tends to do a very good job of conveying her interpretation of the lords inside of this nakshatra, as well as especially the moon and the Lagna. Really anyone with any strong emphasis of this nakshatra. And we have to keep in mind that this author of this book, Radhe, she is herself a sidereal practitioner. So I'm going to be wary, and I'm going to try to mention when I see that her interpretation of the Pushya native can sometimes carry with it the idea that that Cancer is inherently combined with the symbolism of Pushya, because that is the understanding of the sidereal astrologers, is that the nakshatras are married to their signs. Us tropical astrologers don't necessarily jive to that. And so we have to be careful to be discerning when there might be distortion in what we read here. Usually this author's pretty good. So I'm going to keep my eye out and see if I feel anything like that happening. But just keep in mind as we read this that the character of Pushya native that she is portraying here might betray some of that unnecessary association of Cancer with Pushya. Even though Pushya at present is at the tail end of Cancer, we can't necessarily say that it's fully correlated there as tropical astrologers. So I digress. Even if you're a sidereal astrologer, you should still get something out of this. This is the Pushya native. Of the 27 lunar nakshatras, Pushya is one of the most auspicious from a spiritual perspective. It imparts in its native devout interest in the sacred and profound curiosity about the higher meaning of life. Lofty subjects such as theology, philosophy, metaphysics, and world religions intrigue the Pushya native. In jyotisha texts and texts about ancient Indian astrology and astronomy, Pushya is associated with Shastra initiation, as well as educational endeavors. That comes from Muhurta Chintamani. Now, should the nodes of the moon occupy Pushya, here's something useful for us. If the nodes of the moon occupy Pushya, you should expect more eccentric, although potentially still sacred, initiations into Vedic literature and thought and energy. For example, the native might have a fascination with the archaic sciences of witchcraft, sorcery, shamanism, or the left-hand path of Tantra. Now, as we've read, we've gone through the character of Brihaspati in Vedic literature, and what we note is that Brihaspati's father is Angiras, who authored the magical spells of the Atharva Veda. So Brihaspati, the lord of this nakshatra, himself was known to work with magic. So especially having Ketu or Rahu in Pushya, there might be some inclinations towards exploring these esoteric, subtle, supernatural, superconscious aspects of human consciousness. Now, we read here, let's see. Now, the author is giving us an illustration of someone named Alice Bailey, who had the Lagna. Oh, no, I can't use this. The author's giving us an example here that would only work with sidereal astrology, so I'm not going to speak to it here. Now, another foremost quality of Pushya, remember Pushya means to nourish. Another foremost quality of Pushya natives is an innate desire to support, nourish, and foster others. It's really what the guru is doing, is fostering the best inside of their student. So implications for the Pushya native include a decidedly maternal disposition, a motherly disposition, one which is likely to influence his vocation of choice. Perhaps the person is a professional caretaker, a nurse, a doctor, a chef, or even a dairy farm owner. Remember, the Brihaspati also has an association with cows. So somebody who is a farmer taking care of many cows and animals has Pushya kind of written in it. So this maternal caretaking nature might play into the career and character and career objectives anyway of someone with Pushya emphasis. I got a hair that's itching me. Now, Pushya also translates as to flower, meaning to blossom or to cause to flourish. Brihaspati cultivates his students by teaching the vidya, the vision, the truth of the Vedas. Brihaspati's teachings help students develop into wise, discerning, and spiritually productive individuals. Pushya Nakshatra encourages its native to do just the same. Depending upon the overall chart terrain, such energy is likely expressed through a career as a personal coach, a spiritual counselor, a teacher, or a professor. Perhaps the native is even an advisor to distinguished people. It's presidents, CEOs, chief political figures, or religious heads are the type of people that this person might counsel. After all, Brihaspati was the advisor to the gods themselves. We could really see this with the Lagna, with the moon, and also particular career things, obviously. If someone's MC, if someone's midheaven falls into the nakshatra Pushya, we can expect there to be some emphasis of this going on there in their career. Now, things can go awry for afflicted or exaggerated planets in Pushya. For example, under the right chart conditions, a Jupiter that is exalted here, mind you, it's specifically considered in Vedic astrology that an exaltation of a planet happens mostly in a certain part of the sign. For example, Jupiter is mostly exalted at around 0 to 5 degrees of Cancer, where Pushya is not. But it's still, most people would still consider that Jupiter anywhere in Cancer still carries an exaltation energy to it, as well as delighted by the moon, its friend. So what we read is that a Jupiter that's in Cancer, that is under the right conditions, it's like Jupiter that's in Cancer, but still, whether it's got trines from its enemies, Mercury and Venus, or whether it has other illnesses, if it's in the 7th house where it's not as happy, if it's got ill Vimshopak, it's got ill Shadbala, all these different things. An exaggerated yet afflicted Jupiter in Pushya is capable of instilling a know-it-all attitude that offers literal tolerance for the thoughts and opinions of others. Similarly, we read that if extremist Rahu occupies Pushya, the native may be fanatical in their beliefs, venturing far beyond the boundaries of societal norms. Now, Mars, being debilitated in Cancer, can be emotionally charged about his ideals if Mars is in Pushya in Cancer. One might picture a passionately overzealous preacher or missionary, someone who is acting on the wisdom of Pushya, but the Mars, again, is not discerning enough to clarify, to discern. So it's lazy in how it expresses a martial energy about Pushya. Now, what we read is that Clint Eastwood has Pushya moon. We also see that that moon is aspected by Mars in his chart. Clint Eastwood's popularity as an actor exploded with his role as Harry Callahan in the 5 Dirty Harry films. Clintwood's role Clintwood, that does say Clintwood, but it's supposed to say Clint Eastwood's role as Callahan is an example of the extremes that Pushya is capable of going to in the name of righteousness. Callahan, the character Callahan, is a badass cop who never hesitates to cross professional and ethical boundaries in pursuit of his own vision of justice. It's like a vigilante type of consciousness. Empire Online describes Callahan's character. Callahan is a shoot first, ask questions later type of guy, a bit of a pervert and a massive racist to boot. This is Pushya kind of gone to extremes. However, under optimal chart conditions, Pushya's divine, Deva, and dharmic inclinations, as stipulated by Jyotish Shastra, as a planet's going well in Pushya, can instead produce an individual whose focus is on humanitarian issues or spiritual ideals of great concern to the world. Now, there's an example of someone here. Exemplary of this pristine potential is Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaja. And this is someone who had the moon and Jupiter in Pushya. The divine Sridhar Maharaja founded the Sri Caitanya Saravasta Mata, an Indian temple dedicated to the devotion of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna. A vast library of his discourses and teachings formed the basis of books such as the Srimad Bhagavatam Gita, The Hidden Treasure of the Sweet Absolute, The Search for Sri Krishna, Reality of the Beautiful, and many more. Cool. Now, the responsibility to protect and conserve the Brahmin caste rests solely upon the shoulders of the character Brihaspati. Plus, Brihaspati is deeply vested in the cause, as his own exalted ranking is dependent upon it. The Brahmin caste represents the established sacred order of society. It's a social stratum with exclusive rights to the secret teachings of the Vedas. Its very existence mandates the exclusion of those who would come and taint and distort Vedic knowledge and literature. The Brahmin caste is also responsible for preserving wisdom from one generation to the next. These are all the good, ideal sides of the Brahmin caste, even though it itself can deteriorate in the annals of time due to human ignorance. The Brahmins established schools for instructing young boys in the Vedas and the ways of the yajna, the spiritual sacrifice. So thus, Pushya is cloaked in that ancient wisdom with its rites and rituals. So the native may actually actively participate in a secret society with its own language and arcane rites. This can mean the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, or the Hare Krishnas, interestingly. In a more mundane chart, perhaps the native is a member of a club catering to the higher echelons of society, such as the Harvard Club, the Norwood Jewish Club, or New York's Core Club. Alternately, under different chart conditions, the native may be an activist for the preservation and protection of various societal groups, whose culture and ancient traditions are at risk of extinction. An example of this, and I think this is a great example this author gives, is the Native Americans. Somebody could be in Pushya, learn the ways of the Native American peoples, and be someone who is very intent on helping to continue to sustain the beautiful and important wisdom of the Native American peoples. Dope. For any Pushya people who are doing that, keep it going. But I get it, the natives of this nakshatra would be interested in continuing almost extinct ancient knowledges of various sorts. It should be noted that the function of the priest is highly ritualistic, mandating the execution of hundreds of thousands of rites and rituals. Each rite requires exacting perfection. Even a single mispronounced word or erroneously performed action can thwart the efficacy of the sacrifice. Hence, it's not unusual to find a perfectionist streak in this native, someone who's very used to getting something, doing it a million times, and mastering it profoundly, which can make for great actors, memorizing lines, performers of things that involve vocals, etc. Now, lording over an entire societal caste, as well as the singing Rikvens of the Vedas, Brihaspati possesses stellar leadership skills, and as well is adept in Arthashastra, which is political science. This is politics. This is people who endeavor to be important leaders in a community, important voices in a community. So this native may express a strong interest in governmental leadership positions, economic policy setting, or public administration. Of course, the native might simply prefer the profession of choir master, somebody who just likes to lead the music of a choir, or leading groups of people in general, similar to Indra. Now, lastly, mention should be made of the familial life of Brihaspati, the family life. As a devoted Brahmin, Brihaspati takes a vow of celibacy. This results in his wife Tara's discontent. She feels unloved. She feels like she can't get into the tantra and the embodied sensuality of woman. And so a very public affair happens between Tara, Brihaspati's wife, and Chandra, who's the signifier of the moon in the ancient Vedas. A variety of conjugal drama leading to public embarrassment can be possible for Pushya native, because they can be so focused on their spiritual austerity that they neglect to deal with what is happening with their wife. And this could be the same vice versa for a woman with Pushya qualities who misses out on that quality inside herself. Family and friends tend to get embroiled in such events and help exaggerate the drama by actively and vocally choosing sides. Perhaps the drama even makes front-page news or results in an ugly courtroom battle. And this is the Tarakamaya Samgrama, that story of the priest who had a wife, didn't care for his wife's emotional and sensual needs, and so she went and had an affair. And it was a big sociological thing. So, in a chart with fewer indications for publicity or notoriety, it could simply be that the spouse of the Pushya native never quite lives up to the lofty ideals and morals that they try to espouse, causing disillusionment with the institution of marriage. Interesting how marriage, austerity, commitment, devotion, truly, ultimately, how I feel is that if this native has Pushya emphasis in their chart and they abide by Tantra, by the essential needs of their lover while abiding within themselves, maintaining boundaries, maintaining communication, but also listening to their bodies. I'm a tantric person. I'm somebody who leans towards the austerity aspect of things, but I listen, the light of austerity, I feel it should be balanced with the sound of what is happening inside the human nervous system. Its desire for peace, for even eros, for sensuality, for enjoyment. I believe they can be mended together.